Welcome to Moss Marketing Mondays, aka the M3 Podcast. Brought to you by Moss Marketing Group, bringing you everything marketing every Monday. Stay tuned for marketing tips and tricks you can use today. The M3 Podcast, marketing knowledge to help you succeed. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the M3 Podcast. This is going to be our second one going live that is done virtually. So super cool. And Logan and I have Jonathan Page here. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Let's tell the viewers, what is it that you do?
By trade, I'm an attorney, licensed attorney, and I have had the privilege over many years of standing side by side with 8-figure, 9-figure business owners, scale up, launch new products, and have been part of the team to get those products to market. And it's just been an incredible experience. But I also come from an entrepreneurial family and have gone out in many ventures myself. And so it's entrepreneurship is something that I love. I've got a passion for seeing business owners go out into the market and improve people's lives is just incredible. So, my background is in legal, but we work with small to mid-sized businesses. We help them scale fast and scale with confidence. And we do that by aligning our legal strategy with their business goals, and so that they can achieve more with their business.
Super cool. So you come from an entrepreneurial family. What did that look like growing up on, was it mom, dad, both? What was it that dynamic looked like?
Really kind of both, because my mom was an author. And so she was creating books and putting them out there in publication. That in and of itself is a business, in my opinion. She's got a product, that's her book. But really, my entrepreneurial journey started with my dad. I was in my early 20s, and I was at a conference with my aunt, my dad's sister. It was some sort of growth conference, and we were in there was some sort of break. And so we were in the lobby of the hotel, and she told me a story about my dad that just, I will never forget. She said that my dad had this burning desire to go to college and was looking for the application fee, and went to his father, we called him Papa, and asked him for the application fee so that he could apply to college. And Papa told my dad, "You were too stupid to go to college. You were too stupid to go to college." And that shook me to my core when I heard that, because I know my dad's story. And I didn't realize that that's how it started. And, what I realized is I never wanted to be in a situation as an entrepreneur or a business owner where I didn't try something. I didn't give it my all because somebody else out in the world, told me what to do or what not to do. I've got my 2-year-old who's joining me here. Yeah. So, my dad ultimately at 43 finally had the courage to start a business. It took him till age 43 to do it because of that moment with Papa. He did get the application fee. He did struggle through college. He slept on the floor of a dark room where he developed photography because he didn't have the money to pay for dorms. And so he just could barely get the tuition money. And he waited till 43, and then he ultimately scaled up 2 businesses, both successful, both 8 figures, exited them both successfully. And that's when I was, growing up, is when he was running those businesses and positioning them for exit. So I didn't realize all of the resistance he had from people who he loved that almost kept him from getting into business and really making a difference. And I also realized that he had a lot of that resistance in his own head, right? Because you're going to hear those things when you're trying to do anything out there in the world. You're going to have the naysayers. And he built up a lot of mental resistance. I mean, he built up a lot of guilt and shame that really prevented him from going out and doing that. And so when he was raising me, he really focused on trying to bring out entrepreneurship in myself. he didn't want me to wait until 43. So when I decided to go to law school, I really was going to law school because I wanted to get a business degree. And there's many options, right? You can get an MBA. I thought a legal degree would be a cool way to do it. Ultimately decided that I loved business law and wanted to practice. And I remember I graduated, I was working at a mid-sized firm, really reputable firm, doing some complex business transactions, was general counsel for the Georgia World Congress Center Authority, which owned the Georgia Dome, doing a lot of complex work there. And every weekend I'd come home from I would come home for dinner, and my dad would be like, "When are you opening your own business?" Like, he was just relentless about asking me this. I was like, "Dad, I will. I've got to get some experience. I need to work under some other attorneys. I don't know some of this complex legal stuff. They don't teach you this in law school. Let me get my grounding." And so ultimately, I ventured out on my own, opened a law firm, a business law firm, and we started representing 8-figure and 9-figure business owners, and then ultimately started even representing 7-figure business owners, and any way that we could serve small to mid-sized businesses.
Very cool. I think it's pretty crazy when you look at people that own businesses, that entrepreneur that's out there, how many people, even normally within a close circle, still put that doubt in people's head. That one of my guys and I were just out at in Utah, and Andy Frisella was out there, that owns all the supplement superstores and First Form. And he was talking about when he started and no one believed in him. And I think it was the first 10 years he made $52,000. Mm-hmm. And he's a billionaire now. And you look at that, he was sleeping in the back of one of his stores, and he goes, every single person in my life told me I couldn't do it, that I didn't have what it takes. And you have all these individuals just in business everywhere that they talk about when you're 5-6 years old, you can be an astronaut, you can be the president, you can be whatever you want to be in life. That script changes real quick by the time you're 16. Those same people that told you can be an astronaut and you can be the president are now telling you can't do anything. So it's funny how that script switches really quick, and they're like, well, when he was 5, I didn't know if he'd be a genius or not. I didn't know if he could be an astronaut. Now he's grown up, I don't know if they can do that. And people start putting that doubt in someone's head. And I think it's crazy we work with a lot of businesses around Kansas City and things of that nature. We have business owners that are really smart and really educated, book-wise, things like that. And then we have some people that they're just willing to go for it at any given point in time. And because that, they've seen crazy success. And I have business owners that can barely do math. I'm going over numbers and what? And it's you run how big of a company? But it's just, they were the ones that were willing to go for it in those times. And I think that's always a cool story on where people come from, where they come up into business, and kind of get that initial start, because there's always something in there. And I feel like some days, it's just great being an entrepreneur, and the structure that I have created at Moss Marketing Group is way more where everyone's like a business owner with inside the company, that everyone has full control over their income. Everyone they get percentages of everything they get, to where it's very scalable for everyone within, because I come from the automotive space, came straight out of college, worked my way up in a car dealership, got to that top spot. And then it was hey, this is what you're supposed to make the rest of your life. You're a $250,000 a year person. That's what you get. And it just didn't settle well with me, where there was no growth from there. So building this, I wanted something where people had more growth opportunities, but I think you acquire different talents when you do that, and you see a whole different level of business growth. But I see everyone that I work with as entrepreneurs as themselves within the company. But that's very cool on your dad, how he goes out and proves everyone wrong. What businesses did he start at? What was 43?
Yeah, at 43. So he worked as an engineer in the HVAC industry, and he did industrial HVAC. So these big units that would go on big buildings to heat them and cool them. And then there was applications with when you have a car, for example, the car manufacturers, they're going to spray on the paint, in order to paint the car a certain color. And there's a lot of HVAC equipment in there to make sure that the air is at a certain temperature and air is flowing a certain way. So that was his background. So he went out and opened what's called a manufacturer rep firm, where he represented other manufacturers and went and it's essentially like a sales organization. And then he ultimately purchased kind of a fledgling HVAC manufacturer that manufactured custom HVAC units, like from the ground up. Like they got the parts and they're assembling these big HVAC units, and then helped scale that up to multiple nine figures. And those were the businesses that he exited. But, I think, in life, to your point, like you run into these people who, you call them naysayers. But really when they're talking, I think it's helpful to understand that they're talking to a mirror. Like what they're saying to you and what they're saying to these people, it's because they don't believe they can do it. And because they can't do it, they don't want to believe that you can do it. Right. And that's kind of sad. So it's on the one hand, you've got to be able to see that for what it is, and then try not to buy into their story, and try not to even give, negativity back, because it, if anything, hopefully they'll be able to accomplish something that they want to accomplish later as well. But yeah, those naysayers, it can make it difficult, especially on entrepreneurs. I mean, Elon Musk talks about this a lot, like when he was opening SpaceX, and he had already had what's interesting about his story, he was already successful, right? He'd exited PayPal, made a crap ton of money, already up in the top list of richest people, and he goes and wants to do SpaceX, which he has no experience doing whatsoever. He's not a rocket engineer. And like close friends, he'll talk about this. We're like begging him not to do it. Like, you are going to lose. We're worried about you because you just made all this money and you're going to lose it all, doing that. And I think what, Elon says, at least what he says is, the reason he did it is because he felt like it was something worth doing. Like what's the purpose of money? Money is just a resource. It's a tool. What's the purpose of, life if you're not in life living each day trying to make a difference and trying to serve others? And so, I think that's a big, when I see entrepreneurs who are really successful, I feel like they've got a very strong compulsion to serve, and a product and service at its core is a service. It's improving somebody's life in some way. If you're providing marketing services, the way you're providing those services is improving that business owner's life. It's allowing them to scale faster. It's allowing them to achieve their goals that they otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve. That's a service. You are in service of them with your product and service. So, I mean, I think entrepreneurship, if done right, is as worthy, as noble as any charitable cause. I mean, we're on a conference call. We're doing this virtually because of entrepreneurs who had ideas, who decided to take risk,
And I think that's something that it plays very much into. We discuss it all the time here, of business owners that we work with that are always progressing tend to be a lot happier. Like, I feel that there's some correlation between progression and happiness of growing. And you have people that have so much money they can't see straight, and they've hit this like kind of pinnacle and they're not growing anymore. And you see them start losing this happiness that they had on this drive to get there. And that progression, that fulfillment for helping others, there's a lot that plays into that, I feel, with successful people. And you see it more and more the higher levels you get, that when you're doing that service and you really care about, like, I'm always somebody that I say put everyone else before money. Once again, like, money is a piece of paper and it's a tool. That is all it is. And we live lives now so focused around money, when 150, 200 years ago, people were just worried about eating, having water, and having shelter. Like, the world has changed so quickly, and now people will let them losing money affect their whole entire day. And once again, I put the product that we put out, the service we put out, everything of that nature, make that first, and the money just follows. Like, I'm not a accountant or anything by that nature. My brother helps me with a lot of that side. I'm like the visionary that's just pushing forward all the time. And I'm like, I just tell him, just you watch the account. If it ever goes down, that's when you hit me up. Besides that, don't even tell me what's happening. Just you collect payment, just put it in there. Like, I don't want to mess with that side. But it's crazy on the scalability. If you just try to put a great product out there, you see void in market, you capitalize on it, and I don't know, really truly help people. And a lot of people, I think, are so money hungry and greedy that they lose sight of that, and they don't know why they can't succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Money isn't a destination. It's a tool. And, there is a part to that. I think that I don't think God wanted us to be poor, right? I think he, when I read the Bible, at least my reading is of abundance. And if I read any spiritual text of other religions, abundance seems to be a pretty common theme. Like, why would God not want us to eat well? Like, why would God not want us to be able to live in a nice house? And like, why can't you drive a really nice car? Like, so society like creates all these like stories and makes these things like material things bad. They're not bad. I mean, that's somebody's idea. Porsche had an idea. Somebody created that business. People are working and they're feeding their families and they're, improving people's lives in a certain way, or Audi or whatever car company, Tesla, so it's like, none of those things are wrong things. They're just things. And, I think that money, I don't think anyone's really in possession of money. I think money flows through you, right? You're constantly circulating money into your life. And I think you should always be circulating the amount of money that you need to live the life that you want to live and to do the things that you want to do and to make the contributions in the world that you want to make. I mean, it's pretty simple. And, you generate that circulation of money through service, through providing value out in the marketplace, and people pay for that. I mean, I think it's how our society has evolved. And we just, it's too many people create these stories in their head around these things. They coin them evil, or look at that guy's a bad person, and look at all the things they had. I mean, the things that they had nothing to do with whether they were bad or good.
They were a bad
They
person
just
before
put them
they
on a
had money
pedestal.
and after.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
just like you said it, I heard something in a book earlier this week. We don't want to face the fact that people who are living a life that we aren't, like our idols that we put on pedestals, we don't want to face the fact that they're real people just like us. So the people who taunt those things as evil and as something that you just shouldn't have, those are the people who don't want to face the reality that the people that have it are the same as them. They had the same opportunities. They were just willing to do the work and make it happen.
Yeah. I also feel like in today's world, I don't know what point this shifted. Like, I'm 28 years old, so I don't know at what point this shift happened somewhere. But like you said, now people are viewed, if they have a lot of money, as bad people, unless you're a celebrity or a professional athlete of some sort. They're allowed to have a lot of money and have Rolls Royces and everything like that. But if a business owner goes out and does it, they're a terrible person. They're taking advantage of people. They're doing all these things wrong. And you listen to Andy Frisella talk about it. He doesn't post about everything that he does. And he has a monster car collection. And he's like, people tell me I'm a terrible human being for having this big car collection, all this stuff. I should donate more money. He goes, I built a whole entire city in Haiti. Because I built a school. They have medical centers there. They have houses. They have all this stuff there that I built with money that I made. He goes, nobody talks about that when they talk about my cars. He goes, so anytime anyone wants to call me a bad person for what I've done, I would like to ask them if they have also built a city in Haiti and put up their funds to go do it, and all these things that he's been able to do because of that. And I dealt with the same thing when we were in the automotive space. People thought because we were a car dealership, we were bad people. And people didn't realize what we did outside of that we helped with the Special Olympics all the time. We helped with the high school in my town that I grew up in. The dealership paid for the whole entire field, paid for the new court. That was $500,000 that we spent getting that stuff done. And it's like, so all that money goes to these things, but we're terrible people for owning a car dealership, for getting to drive a nice car, for having a nice house. And I don't know what time that shift happened where all of a sudden business owners can't be the same as they were in the 90s. You can't go out and take advantage of someone as a business and make it feasible for the long term. Stuff travels way too fast now with the internet. We can sit here and have conference calls in Georgia and Missouri, live time. And it's like, if I go out and I try to screw people in Kansas City, everyone around the country is going to know that fast. They can Google our name and they're going to know that we're terrible business people. Like, scalability that way doesn't work anymore. And I don't know, have you seen that transition at some point in life, like where that came? Because I know you deal with a lot of high level business owners. So
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if you look at, so I don't know when the transitions has. I do think that you're right. Like, you've got reviews are so critical now, and 5-star reviews, and so all of that puts and all that's more accessible. It used to not be. You could control your reviews, right? You could put your own testimonials, and that's what people would listen to. But now other people can kind of force their reviews on you. And so I think that's all good things. It really puts businesses in check. But when you go back and you study like the elite entrepreneurs of the Industrial Revolution, Rockefeller, Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, Henry Ford, you study the digital revolution titans, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, you study the titans of today, like Elon Musk. I mean, they're by no means perfect. They're human beings, just like anybody else. But I think they all shared a very, they were all passionate about trying to make some contribution in the world. I mean, Carnegie was one of the biggest philanthropists ever. I mean, Rockefeller was constantly trying to, he donated half of his fortune, I think, before he died. J.P. Morgan was trying to bring electricity. I know we look at like Edison and Nikolai Tesla, but it was really J.P. Morgan that created the distribution for electricity around the U.S. I mean, which obviously helped push industry forward. Henry Ford, obviously, we wouldn't have suburbs if it wasn't for Henry Ford figuring out how to make cars accessible to everyday people. And so, these guys were really pushed to try to improve our society in some way. And I think that's a common thing among your elite entrepreneurs. Did they take shortcuts? Did they make mistakes? Can you go out and find examples where they made bad business decisions? Absolutely. I mean, that's being human. That's, I'm not saying those things are right, but those are things that we can learn from. And the next entrepreneurs that come along can do better and make better decisions. But did they have a meaningful impact on our society? Absolutely. I mean, it's things that we may even take for granted today were ideas in the heads of these entrepreneurs. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it's something that's so crazy too, that you watch all these different business models and how different they are, that if you're going to build coffee tables, I mean, they're going to be built the same. Like, if you line out a blueprint of how to build this, it's going to be the same every time. That there's no blueprint to entrepreneurship on different business model. There's different ways to scale. I will say scalability is a different factor in that. But I look at we've done this for 2.5 years since I left the automotive space, and the amount of stuff that has been learned in the short period of time that we've done this is astronomical. And I sit there and wish that 2.5 years ago I had somebody sitting there saying, hey, don't do this, bad idea, do this instead. Like, because you're hitting all these different things and you're like, okay, that didn't work. And there is no perfect rhyme or reason to it. And everyone's like, well, why don't you try to do it like these other people? And I'm like, the biggest believer, when everyone goes left, I go right. I don't know where right goes, but that's the way I'm going. And so when we're doing everything different, everyone's like, that's a terrible idea, which some of those terrible ideas ended up being our best ideas, to where now everyone's trying to implement our terrible ideas that were terrible at that time. And it was just something that, I don't know, like, I feel like every business model is different. And I have all these people come in with resumes that they went to college and have a business degree and they think they know everything about business. And it's like, they learn from some professor that I've never heard of, that's never ran a business, or so on and so forth. And my dad was very entrepreneurial, so he's always ran his own businesses, things like that. He's done very well in the business space. But it's kind of funny how everyone tells you something different, and there's really no set like roadmap for it. What
So I think it's a good segue into kind of your mission to help. I read in your bio you want to help 100,000 business owners achieve 357 billion. Let's talk about that a little. Where's that come from, and what's the motivation behind that?
So I looked at the top revenue company that's ever existed, which is Apple, right? They're worth trillions, but their annual revenue is around 357 billion. Obviously, it's changing. So my thought process was, if one company can do 357 billion, then 100,000 companies can do 357 billion, right? And so that's where we came up with that number. And the reason we focus on revenue really is because it's a goalpost, right? So if your vision for your company, for your business, where you want to go and what you want to achieve with your business is the end zone, right? That's where you're trying to get to. You need some goalposts to be able to find the end zone, right? And I think the two most critical goalposts is a revenue number and a timeline. And that's all they do. They help you see where the end zone is so you know where you're running, right? We had a client that was in the clinical research space, and he was always mission driven. His name's Jeff Kingsley. He's the CEO of Centricity Research. They're a global company now. And we were with him since he was a small kind of company based out of Columbus. And he was very mission driven. It was all about improving clinical research. And he had a very strong mission statement. He hired on that. He said he never cared about revenue. It wasn't about how big he grew it. And then over time, as he grew his team and he started doing, scaling up, he realized he needed some way to find that end zone, right? The ultimate end zone of improving clinical research. So when he finally got a revenue goal, which was he wanted 160 million, and he added a timeline to it, his team got really focused really quick, and they were able to really mobilize in a way that helped them scale faster. So, I think the revenue number is absolutely critical in helping you see the end zone. So that's where that revenue number. That's why we focus on that revenue number. And so we do that in kind of a number of ways. We got three silos. One silo is our law firm. It's a law firm that's really focused on what we call an elite group of clients. It's an intimate group of members, so to speak, that are all trying to, if they're under 8 figures, they're in the 7-figure, 6-figure range. It's because they're scaling up and they're getting investment money, or they're already kind of in 8 figures and 9 figures, and they're trying to get to an exit down the road. And we're providing legal services to help them, optimize the way that they go and achieve the goals that they want to achieve. The other two silos is a mastermind that we run with, many of which are our clients. They're typically 8-figure and 9-figure business owners that we put in a room, and I facilitate every week, and that's through BOR, Business Owners Achieving Results. InPrime Legal is the law firm. And then the third silo is a new venture that we're bringing to market called Contract Sprint. It's a marriage between your LegalZoom, if you're familiar with that, where you can go on and get an automated legal document, and our full service law firm. And the theory behind it was, can we create software that functions much like AI, that will produce a document in minutes, similar to LegalZoom, but it's a custom document that addresses your specific risk in a deal, and produces a document, a lawyer-grade document, a document that in many cases is better than what you would have gotten had you waited 3 weeks, hired an attorney, and paid $5,000. Can we do that? That was the theory, and I believed that we could. And I felt very strongly we could, because I knew that the legal industry has been slow to evolve to adopt a very critical tool that they have failed to adopt, which is a checklist. And what you have, this was looked at in the medical industry. There's a great book called Checklist Manifesto. It was a surgeon, general surgeon, who wrote that book, and he realized that there was so much inconsistency in surgical operations. It was horrible, and there was a lot of deaths, a lot of major complications that were occurring because physicians just weren't using a checklist. And when he went out to introduce the checklist, they did a big study. They had like 9 big hospitals. He worked with the World Health Organization to introduce a checklist, like crazy innovation, right? And they found like they reduced the death rate by like 47%. Like, these are people's lives by introducing a checklist. When they verified their study and got the results from these 9 hospital systems around the world, he went out on a campaign to have other hospitals and doctors and physicians around the U.S. adopt it. He got so much resistance. Doctors were like, I'm a doctor, a checklist can't do what I do. I need to rely on my judgment. And it's the same in the legal industry. There's too many attorneys who just, like, literally, if y'all had a document you needed and it was the same situation, you gave the same facts, but you spoke to the attorney on Monday, and then you spoke to them, say you spoke to them on Friday, and then you spoke to them 2 weeks later, in each 3 of those situations, you'd get a different document. Even though you were the same client, same situation, it's because that attorney's going to ask different questions. I mean, we know this, right? This is common that because they're not using a checklist. So what our software does is it creates this very robust artificial intelligence-like checklist. It changes its questions depending on your answers. And then it actually creates a legal document that our team reviews. So it's not just going to you. We're going to take a look at it, but at the same time that you get it, to make sure that there's no issues with it. And you can get a really high quality lawyer grade document in minutes. And so that product is what I'm most excited about right now, because that's that third silo is where we're spending all of our time and attention right now. And that website's live, contractsprint.com. There's no payment portal hooked up yet because we're still kind of testing some of the documents, but you can go on there. 2 documents are ready: operating agreement for an LLC and an NDA. Our NDAs are free for life. They will always be free. It's one of our give backs to the small business community, and it's a phenomenal document. I mean, we spent hundreds and hundreds of hours developing every crazy situation with an NDA. You would think that an NDA would be standard, but it's not. If you're the disclosing party, you don't want a narrow definition of confidential information. If you're the recipient, you don't want a broad definition of confidential information. How you write the NDA really should change based on how you're positioned in the deal. This accounts for all that complication. It makes it very easy to use. And then our operating agreement was recently launched. So if you were to go on there now, you could actually get both of these agreements for no charge. There will be NDA will be free for life, but the operating agreement, we will be hooking up a payment portal soon, and then we'll start adding some documents to the platform. But if any of your users want to get like a document we would normally charge like $5,000 and have an entire legal team review it once they do a submission, because we're extremely interested at this point, making sure that it's absolutely perfect. Like, they're going to get more attention than they've probably ever gotten from a legal team on a document today. They can go to contractsprint.com and give it a try. I think they'll have a great experience. But that's our third silo. So ultimately, we work with small to mid-sized business owners. We've traditionally worked with 8-figure, 9-figure business owners who are trying to scale fast and scale with confidence, that are trying to, bring new products to market, trying to do strategic alliances. There's a lot of legal considerations around all of that. That's where we really shine with our legal strategy, and we do all the work, obviously. But we're now kind of expanding our reach to all small business owners that we find just really don't have good legal documents in place. Because they don't like attorneys. They don't want to wait 3 weeks. They don't trust the documents they get. LegalZoom's going to give them just some generic document that merged in their business information. They can't trust it. And, we want to be able to go to them and say, we've got something really affordable now that's really quick, and that's going to produce a document that's just like probably better in many cases than what you would get if you had hired an attorney, waited 3 weeks. And paid $5,000.
I think that's a pretty large void in market there. And I can definitely say
Yeah.
from like starting a business and going through all of it, I don't know about other spots in the country, but where we're at, that would be huge. And I have no question that that's going to take off super quickly. Going back a little bit to that goalpost in the end zone, when you set those numbers out there, and this is something I ran into, and I like advice for a lot of business owners that are scaling quickly and going through that, is you figure out really quick that growth path is a lot different than what you originally think. So when I was by myself, I thought as I get two people, I'm looking at what month over month is, and then I'm taking that. I set a 5-year goal. All of a sudden, in 12 months, we hit the 5-year goal. What I didn't take into account was when you have 10 people, now everything's going 10 times the speed as you're onboarding people, as scalability happens. What do you recommend, like when you're taking on employees, when you're taking on all the extras of business, when you set those goalposts, what's the average time and revenue that people are setting those out?
Yeah, so there's a lot of great books and kind of thought leaders on this, and they all say different things, right? You've got kind of Vern Harnish, who has his one-page strategic plan. You've got Jim Collins, who talks about the 10 to 20-year BHAG. There was a recent book, and I can't think of it now, but I really liked what she said, and that's 3 years out. And the reason she advocated for 3 years out is because it's if it's too far out, it's really hard for the team to rally behind it. If it's 3 years out, that makes it much more fungible, and your team can kind of really measure progress towards that 3-year goal. It doesn't mean that you don't have the BHAG, right? And you may even still put a number on that BHAG, but what the more critical number is the 3 years out. And so then you can start breaking things down into year 1, year 2, year 3, and then from there you can break things down into quarters. And your team has got a kind of a very specific, they know what they're doing this quarter, they know what their quarterly initiative is, they know what their KPIs are, what metrics they're trying to hit this quarter, and then they can see how that's impacting their progression towards that goal. But if it's 10 years out, it's hard to really see if you're making progress towards it, right? So I think 3 years is a really solid spot to aim for, and I think that 3-year marker is more important probably than even the 10-year revenue marker.
I definitely think those like shorter intervals are easier to keep people rallied behind, but they're also thinking the longevity of the company and things of that nature at that spot. It's not too short to be viewing. So I'm always interested on people's kind of outlook on that, on how far out they set goals. And it's, especially in scaling companies, there's some companies that they set goals. I'm like, isn't that pretty much exactly what you're doing right now? They're like, yeah, if we pretty much just don't drop off of here, we're fine. Like, but once again, very much growth mind oriented and scalability and thinking really large. What?
Yeah, you've got to paint a picture of what really large looks like, and you've got to give it some hair and description and stuff. I mean, what's so fascinating to me, like just generally in life, you'll talk to people about like the law of attraction, right? If you read Think and Grow Rich, if you read The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. I mean, people think the law of attraction is new, but Wallace Wattles wrote The Science of Getting Rich back in like it was like 1895 or something like that, like even before the 1900s, and it talked about the law of attraction then. So it by no means a new concept. It's been used by people who have achieved big things for a very long time. But you talk to them, they think, oh, this is all bogus, or they listen, but then they don't do it, right? They don't actually wake up. And I talk to people who read Think and Grow Rich all the time, and I ask them, I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but if we're really into it, I'll say, do you recite the self-confidence formula? And sometimes they don't even know what that is. It's like the main thing from Think and Grow Rich. I know I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite major purpose. I hear and now promise to render, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is something I recite every single morning. So it's interesting to me, like they don't actually follow through on these principles. But yet, if they're in a cash crisis, if they're in like the lowest situation in their life, if they're calling you up and they're saying, I'm just at a really bad time in my life right now. What's going on in their head? I'll tell you what's not going on in their head. What's not going on in their head is what's actually happening today. What's going on in their head is what they're fearing is going to happen tomorrow and the next day or a week from now. They're imagining their business tanking. They're imagining what people are going to say about them. They're imagining like how their reputation is going to be damaged, all of which is an illusion because it hasn't happened. And it is very specific. Like they're getting into minute details of what next week is going to look like. You talk about like visualization. It's visualization to extreme. It's just the wrong type of visualization. It's visualizing how bad your life's going to be and how bad things are going to turn out for you, right? Imagine taking that same visualization and just visualizing what success looks like for you, right? And that's what all these books are trying to teach and promote. Like they all kind of go back to these central themes. It's when you set these big goals, it's not just a matter of setting it. You got to wake up every day and breathe it and live it and think about it and put it front and center in your head and, write it down. I mean, it's all of that's so very critical. And what people don't realize is that they're doing that anyways. They're just doing it with the things that they don't desire, right? The results that they don't want. And if they could just have their, somebody once told me there are no problems in life. There are only situations to deal with. So even when you're in a situation that could turn out bad, you don't run from the situation. You face it. You face the facts. But you can face the facts by putting your mind to think through, how can I successfully deal with this situation? How can I come out of this crash crisis successfully? How can I deal with this toxic person successfully, which may be terminating? How can I, and instead of, focusing on all the bad things that you think are going to happen that haven't yet happened yet, and visualizing it and manifesting those things. I mean, that's the thing about the law of attraction. When you visualize things to that nth degree, it causes you to manifest that in your life. And you've got to focus on, if an entrepreneur can do anything, it's to train their mind to constantly be focusing on what success looks like for them in their business, in their life, and doing that every single day.
Yeah, and I think we see it a lot in successful business owners. Very much everyone that's around me can attest to, I think, larger than life most of the time. But there's business owners that we've worked with that we call it creating their own recession, that they put this fear in their head and they create this exact illusion that they put in their head before anything ever happens. It's like, hey, the market's going to shit. Everything's going downhill. This is what I like. So I'm going to start laying people off now. So I've seen it with business owners I know that they start laying people off. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, business is going great. No. So like market's coming down. Like it's coming down. They're laying all these people off. Then you run into them months later and they're like, business has never been this bad. And I'm like, you don't have any employees. Like all these things have like came raining down. You created that. Like I saw people that hit the recession a year ago because somebody on the news told them that a recession was coming and created their own recession for their company. And they're like, are you feeling the hit? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like we're onboarding accounts. Everything's great. Like life's good. But it's that people will put it, I say fear isn't real. Like I feel like that whole thing that they build out is fear, and danger is real. Like don't go into a fire. That's dangerous. But fear is an illusion that you made up that you were going to be in that fire. Like, and that's not real until you're in the fire. So it's this fear that people have of the economy, of whatever it is. You can put something in your head of what it visually looks like, good or bad, and both people execute that exact same thing. The end goal just looks completely different for two different people. And it's kind of hard when you watch people create their own recessions from the outside in.
Yeah. It's so I had a mentor tell me, you know, even in the Great Depression, everybody was buying something, right? Like that's our society. I mean, we don't go and grow our own food. We don't like build our own cars. We don't produce our own gas. I mean, we're in a society where the exchange is money, right? But that's how we get the things that we need. So their budgets may be a lot less, right? Because we're going through a recession or a Great Depression, but the buyers don't go away. And every economic situation has its own opportunities. And so the most successful entrepreneurs, they don't fear. I mean, they don't have control over if we go into a depression. They don't control that. They don't control if we go into a recession, but their perception of it's different, right? It's not fear, it's opportunity. Okay, we're going into a recession. How can we re-engineer our products to be desirable to the buyers of a recession? How can we re-engineer our products to be desirable to the buyers of in a Great Depression? I mean, people forget that Disney became the successful entrepreneur that he became during the Great Depression, right? He put out, I think it was the first feature-length film, animated film that had ever been put out. Again, a bunch of naysayers within his own company and outside telling him that that would never fly. Like nobody's going to watch I mean, yeah, they'll watch 20 minutes of an animated film, but not feature length. Like that's stupid, right? And I think it was the Seven Dwarfs, or I can't remember what that first feature length film was. It was one of those, but was one of the best selling films of all time, and the best selling film in the Great Depression, which means like people who were poor were spending their money going and seeing that film. Like the buyers didn't go away, and that's when he generated all his wealth. I mean, all of the industrial titans generated their wealth during the Depression. I mean, so it's just a matter of it's a different opportunity, and again, it's going to it's a situation to deal with, right? Like I think it is helpful or healthy for a business owner to say, okay, if there's a recession next year in 2023, how do we deal with that successfully? I think that's a healthy question. What's not a good question to ask is, how many people are we going to have to lay off if there's a recession? How many, like that's creating that recession in your head. But if your attitude is like, okay, recession's not negative. It's just, it's a different economic situation. How do we deal with that successfully? We've got a friend that's got a $500 million company in the manufacturing space, and he wants a recession. Like he's been telling me, I'm waiting for this recession to happen because the supply chain issue is just killing us. And if we can have a recession, we can kind of get things back on from a supply chain perspective. So it's, everybody has different perspectives of it, but a healthy perspective is just to say, how do we deal with this economic situation successfully?
Yeah, I think it's a great example of something that we talked about we have a weekly coaching group as well where we meet and kind of mastermind. And this morning in our meeting, we were talking about how when stuff like that happens in life, you have to control the things that you have control over and just manage the things that you don't and realize that you don't have control over them.
Yeah, and that's very much in a space of people can look at things one of two ways. It's either this is terrible, life's crashing down, or what are all these opportunities that come? Yeah. And we've already came up with not different marketing strategies, but different packages for different business owners that when we first started, we were very heavy, high dollar accounts. That's what we lived by. But then we didn't really play with any of the smaller accounts. We didn't acquire that stuff. That wasn't our bread and butter. But we're like, hey, as if economy does vary at all, we can have a lot more, we can take a lot more of the market share really quick. And the larger portion of the market share we own is, once again, just an opportunity. And those opportunities come, and you have to be, once again, it's a healthy question to see that things are happening, things are shifting. But it's also my thought process and the way I think is, how am I going to onboard more people to man the amount of work that we're going to have when this comes? Because all it's going to do is open up the floodgates for us to have that much more market share. I've put aside more money for marketing. I've put more money back to really, when that gate opens, to be able to run through it full speed with everything we have, instead of where everyone else is running away from that gate the opposite direction. They're going to be entering a different gate into somewhere I don't want to be. So it's just kind of different on how people look at it. And once again, I think it's fully a mindset of just watching opportunities, watching void in market, where to capitalize, and I don't know, continue to grow even in times that most people don't see ideal. I see those as the biggest opportunities.
Yeah, and you can get better talent during the economics when there's strain in the economy. Because you just have a lot of business owners who are in that fear mode and they're laying good people off, and now they're up for grabs, people that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So
most of the time I feel like good employees don't like being around those leaders either. I feel like they want to be behind the person running into it. They want that fearless leader in front of them. And I feel that a lot of people lose employees just by having that fear factor all the time. That if I'm in a company and the person above me is just scared of everything, they start relaying that fear down the totem pole, and then it's like, well, he says everything's going to go awry, so I should probably start looking for another job before it goes awry. And you see it all the time. They're like, I don't know why our turnover is so high. I'm like, I can tell you after sitting with you for 15 minutes exactly why your turnover is high. Like, nobody wants to come follow you. But then you go into places that they're like, we have no turnover, and it's like, I can tell you exactly why. Like, I'll go follow this guy or this person, lady, whoever, into wherever they want to go. But they don't let that fear drive them.
Yeah, there's a book that's probably not well circulated or well read. It's called Talent Magnet, and it's written by Mark Miller. He was with Chick-fil-A since the beginning. And he talks about how Chick-fil-A kind of built their talent. And it's really fascinating because if you walk into a Burger King or a McDonald's or a Dairy Queen, and you walk into a Chick-fil-A, it's an entirely different experience, yet they're doing the exact same thing. You've got somebody walking up to a counter, pointing to a Happy Meal or a combo or something, and then there's people in the back that are making it very quickly and then giving it to you, right? Like the utility is not much different from Chick-fil-A to Burger King, but yet an entirely different like employee situation. So he talks about how they did that, and what he came down to is they realized that employees wanted a bigger vision, a better future, and a better boss. And so, with a bigger vision, they just said, Chick-fil-A has a really big vision. Like every business owner, if they're going to be champion, the CEO, the one at the top, really has to be the champion of the vision, because employees want to feel like they belong to something that's bigger than the founder, that's bigger than the CEO, that's bigger than any one person, and that they're on a team and they're going after something big. Better future, they want transferable skills. They want to feel like they're being taught things that if they do leave, those skills would apply just as equally. And so a lot of business owners, they have like a mind block about that. They don't want to teach their employees transferable skills because they're worried they're going to leave. Well, if you're a better boss, they won't leave, right? In fact, it will do the opposite thing. They'll actually more likely to stay because they have transferable skills. You've given them more security, and then a better boss, just being somebody who, cares and wants to set up their employees for success. I also think, a really good boss is somebody who sets very clear expectations, and part of those expectations are around your core values. These are the things that we value. These are the behaviors that we expect from people. So that it's not hard to make those difficult decisions. If you've got to terminate somebody, right? They know that they probably were going to be terminated because they didn't, they knew that they were diverging from those expectations. They knew that they weren't, doing the job that needed to be done. Like having clear metrics around what you expect your employees to achieve. That's a clear expectation. They know if they're not hitting those metrics, right? And so I think a good boss is somebody who sets those clear expectations, and then it makes it's not as personal when you're letting people off the team versus retaining people. It's, they all knew what they signed up for, and either they rose to the occasion or they didn't. And if they didn't, you can do it gracefully and just, it's not a good fit. This organization's not a good fit for you. So, that's what I've seen in the business owners that we work with. They really put a lot of attention on vision. They put a lot of attention on, making sure that they've got good managers, good bosses, and they put a lot of attention on training and teaching these transferable skills.
Yeah, I think training's huge in any industry. That coming from the automotive space, I feel like everyone thinks that the automotive space is really hard. If you train salespeople to sell and teach them the skills that they need to know, the automotive space is really easy. And we have a lot of car dealerships that we do marketing for, and 50% of them are really good at training their employees, training everyone in service, training management, training the title clerks, everything of that nature, and it's just a well-oiled machine. Then we have other ones that don't train anyone, and then it's just people starting, people getting fired, people starting, people getting fired, pointing fingers at everyone why the car business is terrible. And it's like, it's a pretty quick, like you can understand a car dealership normally within like 15 minutes of being in one pretty quickly on how management works, how the whole entire structure of a dealership works, and carries across to all business. Like Chick-fil-A, I mean, they came into a space that it was supposed to be done this way, and they did it. Everyone was going left, they went right, did it a completely different way. Now they don't hold debt out on any of their buildings. Like, I know a lot of the Chick-fil-A owners around here, and just their business model is so unique. And what they've done, where they bring on ownership, and you're not paying all this money up front to be into an owner on them, but you run and manage your stores, and they build out their training facility that you're training before you ever even step foot in the building, that they have duplicate kitchens set up to go through how their process works, how all that works. And that's why their food comes out faster than anyone else. That's why they've had to put in multiple drive-throughs. People want convenience and people want customer service. And they have figured out a way to deliver that better than anyone else. And they have outscaled everyone around them with a better business model. So that training, I think, speaks volumes in its own.
Yeah. And I mean, that whole, go right when everybody's going left, or go left when everybody's going right. That's a common thing that you're always going to see with some of the most successful entrepreneurs. I mean, Elon Musk, when he goes and built a car, he went right, like everybody was going left. Richard Branson, like we're reading, our group's reading the book Losing Your Virginity. It talks, one of the first books that Richard Branson wrote. Every single story of him starting a business was doing the exact opposite of what everybody else was doing in this industry. I mean, even when he opened the record store, it was like they had the no Andy Williams rule, because all of your other record department, stores that were selling records all had like the Andy Williams type stuff, and he wanted to create a more of a cult following. So they literally refused to put Andy Williams in their store. Like, it's an example of doing the exact opposite of what everybody else was doing. Steve Jobs, I mean, when Compaq and Dell and all these other companies, they were just iterating on what everybody else has been doing in the industry. I mean, Apple has never, I mean, when Steve Jobs wasn't there, they did, but since Steve Jobs has been, when he was running the company, I mean, they never did what anybody else was doing. It was like, we're not going to have a button on our phone. Like, everybody else is going to put a button on their smartphone, like, because that's what everybody does, right? And no consumers are going to want to not have a button on their smartphone. I mean, like, so he, these are how these entrepreneurs think. It's like, it's really fascinating. And that's when you get, like, results that nobody's ever achieved. Like, nobody's achieved what Apple's achieved in terms of valuation. Nobody. The most valuable company that's ever existed in the world. Nobody's achieved what Elon Musk has achieved with an automobile dealership. He's, at least today, he's more valuable than any one of those auto dealerships with Tesla. So nobody has achieved what he's achieved with rockets at SpaceX. Being able to launch a rocket and then land it hadn't been done, not by NASA, not by anybody. So it's this is how these entrepreneurs think. And I think the other ingredient of that is that they're absolutely relentless about achieving their vision. Like, once they've set on what they want to achieve, they're just going to do it. And you read about these guys, and you hear them talk, and you listen to other people who are around them when they were making these decisions. It was not a straight path to the top. It was cash crunches. It was near bankruptcy. It was, toxic people in their organization. Branson talks about opening Virgin Atlantic, which is now owned half by Delta. I mean, he's had tremendous success with that airline. And like when they were trying to do their initial like inaugural flight, the rocket blew up, like the part of the thing on the plane blew up on their test flight the day before, and they had to get like one in right away. The guy that Randolph Fields, who initially approached him about doing this, he gave 50% of the company to, ended up being absolutely toxic, sued him, and had an active lawsuit where they were trying to get an injunction against Richard Branson to not let him do his inaugural flight. And I mean, he was up with attorneys dealing with that situation. Ultimately, Randolph Fields lost, and he was able to move forward. I mean, it was like absolutely nightmarish. If you look at like Disney opening the park, I mean, talk about naysayers, but when they went to open that park, we don't hear about it, but they call it like Black Sunday or something. Like the day they opened up, they didn't have enough water, and Disney had to make a choice. Like, am I going to put water to the bathrooms or am I going to put water to the water fountains? And he decided probably better to put it to the bathrooms, so he chose that. But like nobody could get water, and it was like a super hot day, and they thought Disney, like all these headlines came out that said Disney did that on purpose so they would buy more soda, which was a complete false. They had like 10,000 more people show up than they expected because they had been counterfeiting tickets. Like they had a specific limit, and then all these other people showed up. The concrete hadn't yet dried, so people were walking around in like wet concrete. I mean, it was absolutely hellish what happened like the first day they opened Disneyland out in the West Coast. But he just was relentless, right? He was just not going to stop. He wasn't going to let something like that set him back, and he was going to find a way forward. And that's, any business owner who's trying to scale big, who's trying to scale with confidence. If you're expecting like a straight path to the top and some red carpet to achieve the goals you want to achieve, it's not there. I'm sorry. You're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff, and you're going to have to be relentless about achieving your goals.
And those guys, that the Steve Jobs of the world, the Elon Musk, the Disneys, they carved out their own path that there's no one else that's done what they've done. And I think too many people in the business space come in and they say, hey, I want to try to be like this person, but maybe a little bit better. When they put that in their head, they've already set this benchmark of where that person's at. To where it's like, when I started a marketing firm, everyone's like, who are you trying to go after in Kansas City? I'm like, there's nobody in Kansas City that's going to be as big as we are. I go, there's nobody around the Midwest that I'm looking to compete against. I'm like, we're in 2.5 years, we've surpassed most of all of them already. And it's, I don't watch those people as benchmarks. They can do their thing. That has nothing to do with me. But we are driving to where we are going. We are carving our own path in the way that we do it. But you watch all these entrepreneurs that go out and they say there's this company that you want to go after and you want to be like, and then you get there, then what? Now you're going to start carving your path? You've taken this person's path to here. Now you're going to go figure it out and try to do something different. When you're doing it different the whole entire way, it's a lot easier to keep pushing. And that's where all those people have something very similar in common, where they figured out where they wanted to go. They were relentless and they went, and people would be naysayers because no one else had done it. To where when you're going somewhere that no one else has been and no one knows the path, everyone says, don't go out there. And very much so I think that is something that all those people have very much in common, and just really go into no man's land of doing something so different. Because Elon Musk, if he came out tomorrow saying he's going to Mars and everything of that nature, everyone would be like, yep, pretty much. Like everyone expects it now. Like,
yeah.
Same thing with Jeff Bezos. If he came out that he was opening up another company, everyone's like, yep, he's got it. Like, he's going to do it. Anybody on the planet would back him. It's like you have a whole entire planet of people that would back a single individual because they have carved out this new path and everyone will follow. So it's pretty cool what those guys have done. And I feel like you probably get to deal with a lot of very high echelon individuals that are probably very similar to them in what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's your focus. If your focus is to make a meaningful contribution in your marketplace, like you want to do something that adds to the world, then you've got to chart a new path, right? Because just doing what your competition is doing is not adding anything new to the marketplace. There's another great book, Blue Ocean Strategy. I can't say both of their names. It's two authors. One has the last name Kim, but great book. And I mean, one of the premises of that book is that you make the competition irrelevant. Like you go after new market space, that new path that nobody's traveled down, and that gets new customers. And there's a lot of examples of companies that did that they do a case study on in that book. But I think the business owner's focus needs to always be, how do we make the competition irrelevant? It doesn't have to be like, it could be iterating on an existing product in a new way. It doesn't have to be creating an entirely new product. It's like ride sharing. That, its core utility is no different than a taxi service. You got a stranger who shows up that you don't know in a car that you've never driven in or ridden in, that takes you from point A to point B. Uber didn't invent that utility. They just iterated on it, right, in a new way. They said, how can we make this quicker? How can we, add in reviews? How can we make the payment process more seamless? How can we make the cars sexier? They figured out ways to kind of iterate on an existing utility. And by doing that, they attracted new customers. The ride sharing industry is several times bigger than the taxi industry. What does that tell you? It tells you that clearly there's customers that never use taxi services or used them less frequently, that are using ride sharing a lot more, right? So they ended up creating new customers. And that's part of that abundance. Like, that's that flowing money. Like, people started directing their money towards ride sharing when they weren't directing it towards taxi services, right? And so that can happen for any business, any small business owner who's trying to, scale up. If they can find a way to iterate on, the products and services that they already offer in a way that's unique and adds to their marketplace, I think they could probably scale a lot more rapidly.
Very much so. I feel like we could talk to you for like days on this stuff. Very knowledgeable on everything that you're talking about, and very much enjoy it. I'm trying to keep an eye on time. When we're coming to the end, one of the main kind of summarizing questions that I like to go over is, if you went back to your 20-year-old self and you could tell yourself one thing, what would that be? I always keep the most loaded question for the last too.
Yeah. So I think what I would tell myself is, hey, don't have any shame or guilt over the decisions you're going to make. Where you're at 43 or 44, everything that happened in your life led you to that point, right? So just realize that every experience is a good experience. And I think too many of us are in regret land, where, looking back and saying, I wish I had done that, and I wish I had done that. You can't go back in time and redo things, right? Everything that happened in your past led you to where you are today. And you just have to be grateful, right? You just have to have gratitude and see that every experience is a good experience if you choose it to be. And that's what I would tell myself. I wouldn't try to change the trajectory or course, or, give myself some new knowledge that made me make different decisions. I think I would just want to have an impact on my perspective and make sure that I don't, build up any mental resistance around things that happen in my life. Just to be open to the fact that no matter what the circumstances are, it's good, because you can choose it to be good, and you can figure out how to learn from it and be better.
I like that.
I like it.
I'm very much that you're always in a spot for a reason at the right time, and it's everything happens for a reason. You're where you're supposed to be. No matter what that is, good, bad, and different, you're where you're supposed to be. And I think that's a great takeaway on the end. Very, very thankful that you came on today. Any closing thoughts, Logan?
No, very valuable.
I'm glad we got connected. So that is going to be it for the M3 podcast.
Thanks for listening to the M3 Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Want to learn more? Check us out on Instagram at Moss Marketing Group, on Facebook at Moss Marketing 58, or on our website at mossmarketinggroup.com.